This diagram provides a snapshot of climate finance flows through the life cycle. Starting from the left, it highlights the original source of financing through to how that finance is used on the right. The thickness of the lines correlates to the amount of money flowing. CPI presents annual averages to smooth out fluctuations in the data, so the numbers here denote an annual average over 2019 and 2020. So who is behind the $632 billion? The public sector accounted for 51% or $321 billion of CPI's 2019-2020 tracked climate finance. Development finance institutions continued to provide and raise the majority of public finance at almost 70%. Private actors accounted for the remaining $310 billion, which represents a 13% increase from the 2017-2018 average, with commercial financial institutions and corporations together contributing almost 80% of the total. The landscape categorizes transactions by the instrument used to structure the provision of climate finance, covering grants, debt, and equity. Grants accounted for 6% or $36 billion of 2019-2020 climate finance, with governments as the main source of grant funding. Similar to previous years, most climate finance in 2019 and 2020 was raised at debt, and market rate debt accounted for 88% of that total. Almost 100% of concessional, low-cost project debt was provided by public institutions. Equity investments accounted for 33% or $206 billion of total climate finance, a step up from $167 billion in 2017 and 2018. In terms of uses, mitigation finance continued to dominate at over 19% of total climate finance. However, adaptation finance increased by almost 53% in the last 2 years compared to the previous two. Adaptation's total share of climate finance increased to 7%, while projects with dual uses accounted for 2%. Nearly all adaptation finance tracked in the landscape was funded by public actors and primarily flowed towards water and wastewater and other cross-sectoral projects. Dual-use finance primarily flowed to other and cross-sectoral projects, and 86% of the total was committed by public actors. The majority of mitigation finance went towards energy systems, which includes investments in renewable fuel production, renewable power and heat generation assets, transmission and distribution networks, as well as support to policy and national budget and capacity building. Private actors provided the majority of mitigation finance at 54%, particularly in terms of the share of renewable energy finance, indicating the maturity of this market. The landscape tracks climate finance along 6 broad sector classifications: water and wastewater, infrastructure and industry, other and cross-sectoral, land use, transport, and energy systems. Water and wastewater includes projects concerned with water supply and sanitation and wastewater treatment. Infrastructure and industry includes, amongst others, construction work, heating, ventilation and air conditioning, and industrial extraction and manufacturing processes. Other and cross-sectoral covers miscellaneous projects, including policy and national budget support and capacity building, biodiversity, land and marine conservation, and disaster risk management. Land use includes projects concerned with agriculture, forestry, and fisheries. Key activities include sustainable crops, afforestation, reforestation, and sustainable fish production. Transport includes projects concerned with private road transport, such as electric vehicle chargers, rail and public transport, waterways, aviation, and transport-oriented infrastructure. Energy systems covers power and heat generation, transmission and distribution, and fuel production. Key activities include renewable energy production, energy efficiency schemes, and infrastructure for resilience. Just to end, geographically, almost half of 2019-2020 global climate investments went to East Asia and Pacific. China alone represented 81% of that amount, building on strong government support through public spending and national policies. Also, the majority of climate finance, about 3/4, was raised and spent in the same country, confirming the strong domestic preference of investors. Because domestic investment dominates, it is vital to get national policies right, enabling domestic frameworks for attracting investment.